Yeah, I know it's been a while since this movie's been released, but here it goes. When the New Mutants was first announced and I saw the trailer, I remember thinking, yep, this looks interesting. Young mutants and horror elements, a smaller, more psychological X-Men story. That sounds different but interesting nonetheless. Well, I finally watched this movie, and I have to admit, this movie surprised me. If you're like me and only saw the trailers, you probably expected something simple, a younger mutant cast, some horror vibes, and maybe a slightly darker superhero movie. It's a cool concept, right? And technically, it's all there, but there is also more. The premise is straightforward. A girl survives a mysterious storm, wakes up in a secluded facility, and is told that they're there to learn how to control her power. She meets other young mutants, all being quote unquote treated under supervision. It's a classic setup. But then you start learning about these characters, and this is where this movie gets, let's just say, bold. These aren't light Saturday morning cartoon backstories. These are heavy, dark, and uncomfortably adult backstories. One character is dealing with trauma involving abusive men. Another lost control of his powers and caused the passing of his own father and other workers in a mine. Another one accidentally burned his girlfriend alive. Yikes. And then you have another character played by Arya Stark, and she's also had a very disturbing, dark story involving a priest, and I'll just leave the rest to your imagination. The point being, this is not kid stuff, and honestly, I respect that. And I've always wondered what a superhero movie might look like if it's catered to the adult audience. And this movie feels exactly like that. The first half of this movie genuinely leans into it. It feels intimate, psychological, contained, almost like a horror drama with superhero elements layered on top. And then there is the protagonist's power. Her ability manifests other people's fears and traumas into psychologically horrifying reality. That's where the horror visuals from the trailer come in. The smiling faceless man, the distorted hallucinations, the creepy tension in the hallways. Those scenes, yeah, they work. They're unsettling in a way most superhero films have never even attempted to do. And while I was watching the first half, I kept thinking, why did this movie just quietly disappear? Why does no one talk about this? And then the second half happened, and it immediately made sense because the movie kind of loses its nerves. The first half of the movie is about real trauma, heavy one, adult trauma, and when it comes time to resolve it, the film just simplifies everything. Suddenly, it just feels lighter, softer, almost a sanitized version of the movie. And that's a tonal shift that feels jarring. It's like the movie started as a psychological horror drama, and then halfway through, someone said, okay, but remember, this is still a superhero movie aimed at children. Where I'm not going to exaggerate here, and it almost drifts into something that feels closer to Spy Kids' energy in its climax. And again, I am making an exaggerated comparison. It's not an unwatchable movie, it's not terrible, but it's quietly forgotten for a good reason. Instead of fully exploring each character's fear manifestations, the movie leans heavily on the creepy smiling man, which, yes, they are effective, but they do tend to overuse them towards the climax of this movie. I mean, why not expand to the burning girlfriend monster more? Why not add the zombified miners? Why not diversify the horror instead of just focusing on one girl's trauma? It feels like they found one visually marketable monster and decided to stick with it. And then we get to the finale, the Stormbeard, as I like to call him. The literal Stormbeard representing the protagonist's inner turmoil. Visually, it's cool, conceptually, it kind of fits, but the resolution feels way too easy. The protagonist just masters her emotions, control the storm inside her mind, and well, the bear just suddenly disappears, and suddenly everyone's trauma feels wrapped up. It kind of reminds me of that one meme where one person says, "Hey, I'm depressed," and then another person goes, "Hey, don't be depressed," and then the first person goes like, "Oh wow, I didn't think of that. I'm happy now, thank you, stranger." That's what the ending feels like emotionally. That's the biggest issue with this movie, tone. It starts off saying, "Hey, we're going to be different. We're not like the other girls. We're going to be mature and we're going to be heavy." And then it backs away from that promise. It didn't commit. It feels like two different visions fighting each other. One version wanted a darker, adult leaning mutant horror film. The other wanted more of a safer, more marketable, conventional superhero finale, if you will. And instead of choosing one tone, the movie desperately tries to do both things at once, and that's where it misses the opportunity because the foundation is strong. The trauma angle also works, the horror aesthetic works as well, but the ending doesn't trust the audience enough to sit in discomfort. It pulls back. And that's why I now understand why this movie quietly faded away. It wasn't bad enough to be infamous, it wasn't good enough to be memorable, it just kinda existed. One more thing I have to mention about this movie that I didn't like: the audio. I don't know what happened in post production, but the sound mix was rough. Dialogue clarity felt really off. I genuinely struggled to hear what the characters were saying in certain scenes. For a movie that relies on emotional dialogue and psychological tension, that was a big flaw in my opinion. So, where do I land with this movie? The New Mutants isn't a disaster, it's not unwatchable. It's something more frustrating than that. A movie that almost had the guts to be different and then didn't follow through. A great idea, not enough commitment, I would say, and that's worse than just being bad. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, it's time for a goodbye.